Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. Probably 95% of the people that we end up doing business with contact us and say that they listened to our call on the replay. So I'm glad we do have the replay because it makes it convenient for individuals. We like to move quickly through these calls, bottom line the information for you. You know, we know you're busy and have other things to do. We have a standard format. We spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution and evaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe is the base currency for the potential reset of some of these other currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq because there is a lot happening. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies. But as substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information we believe is relevant. The most relevant piece of information would be the window for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. For probably the last 6 to 8 months, we've been talking about January of 2020 as being the most optimal date for the reinstitution of the dinar. Of course, January now has come and gone, but we have also repeatedly stated that if the dinar does not reinstitute in January, we have all the way until March 31st for that to occur. That's because the government can simply delay substantial payments at the 1180 rate, which would allow them to recalibrate the budget. But even in the situation where there had been some payments, even though it would be a nightmare for the Finance Committee, they still could reinstitute beyond the month of January. I'm pretty optimistic that we're looking good for March 31st simply because it's obvious that the government is fast-tracking everything that needs to be done in order for that reinstitution to occur. Now, this is in large part due to the pressure being exerted by the UN, the IMF, and the United States. On the political side, we have the Prime Minister designate Alawi, and he's charged with forming a new government, which he is moving quickly to do. He's also making sure that he's creating a non-sectarian, independent group of cabinet ministers that should meet the approval of the parliament. He needs to sign the 2020 budget into law, but again, we can postpone payments at the 1180 rate prior to that occurring. And he also needs to address the issues that the protesters have brought to light. There is good news there. They are reporting that Alawi meets with different delegations of protesters on a daily basis. So he seems to be doing all of the things that a genuinely non-sectarian prime minister would approach. Now, a little bit about Alawi. There was some speculation about whether or not he would be the right choice, but it looks as though he might have been the right choice. Alawi was involved in the government way back during the years of Saddam Hussein. But as the abuses of Hussein increased, Alawi became a target. As a result, he fled his home country of Iraq, spent 30 years in exile, some of it in Lebanon, most of it in Britain. But he did come back, and he was, in fact, part of the Maliki government. Now, that's why people were suspicious about him. But the truth is that he is genuinely non-sectarian, and he resigned from the Maliki government simply because he rejected Maliki's Shia agenda. So this guy might be the right guy to get things done. The CBI is busy as well. They've already announced that in the very near future they will complete the deletion of the zeros, they will end the auctions, and they will begin payments of the oil revenue stipend, which was promised almost 2 months ago. Now, for all of this to happen, there's one other issue that needs to be addressed, and that is the permanent removal of the undue Iranian influence in country. A couple of things are going on which make the removal of the Iranians a matter of when and not if. First, the United States has nearly doubled its troop strength. As you know, a few months ago, perhaps not even that long ago, the pro-Iranian Shia officials orchestrated hastily a vote for the removal of United States forces from Iraq. There was not a quorum present. It was obviously an attempt to backdoor the United States, have them removed. And in typical Trumpian fashion, Trump's response was to waive the status of forces agreement at them and then to send another 5,000 troops to Iraq. So the United States has made it perfectly clear that an agreement is in place, and the Iraqis are going to honor that agreement, whether the Iranian officials within Iraq approve of it or not. Second, there has been a substantial increase in UN forces in Iraq, which is kind of an odd situation. Generally speaking, they do not like to put UN forces in potential harm's way. They like to send UN forces in more or less as cleanup. Now, why would the UN decide to send troops in? Well, a couple of things are happening. First, the European nations are starting to walk away from the financial contracts that they've entered into with Iran. And second, the UN forces are there, in my opinion, as a buffer between Iran and the United States. Frankly, they're scared to death of a war in the Middle East, and they know that the United States will not put up with any more interference from Iran, particularly if it involves assaulting protesters or any U.S. facilities or, God forbid, any U.S. citizens. So I think that while the UN's stated purpose is to move the Iranians out of Iraq, I think it's also to try to prevent what they fear, which is a war in the Middle East. Now, the new election law has not been passed, but ironically, since all of these other issues seem to be resolved, meaning the political issues and the CBI operations, it's entirely possible that Alawi may remain as the temporary or transient prime minister all the way until 2022. The thinking is that if the guy's throwing strikes, don't pull him out. So for all of these reasons, I continue to believe that the reinstitution of the dinar is going to happen in the first quarter, even though it did not happen in January. Now, there's one other point, and it's this. The CBI and the government have promised that they will, within a matter of weeks, start making the oil revenue stipend payments. Now, since 2012, they have been, quote-unquote, deleting the zeros. Now, what that really means is that they are removing the provisional 3-0 currencies from the Iraqi population. Now, they've been doing that for over 6 years. Why would they then turn around and make these stipend payments with the 3-0 provisional currency? They would undo what they've been doing for 6 years. So common sense would dictate that the only way that they can make those oil revenue stipend payments is to reinstate their currency. And by reinstating their currency, they're going to have to come out at about 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar. So for all of the things I've stated here, most importantly, the stipend payments, I see no reason why the reinstitution will not occur in this first quarter of 2020. Now, that being the case, people really are running out of time to get their affairs in order prior to this reinstitution. Most of the people that have Dinar are hardworking American people who have never in their life had a substantial amount of money to have to manage. That's why Trusts Unlimited has put a turnkey program in place to assist you. What we don't want to see happen is individuals to acquire all of this wealth only to lose it virtually overnight because of inexperience. Our program is a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts with the assignment of your dinar and any other pre-valued currencies to that trust product on paper. Post-RV involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar and hopefully some of these other currencies. So let's start with phase 1, which is the establishment of your pre-RV asset package of asset protection trusts, and again with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Why do we strongly suggest you establish a package of trusts, since there are many other vehicles that can provide asset protection? Well, let's review some of them. Individuals can establish LLCs or sub-S corporations. They do provide some level of asset protection, primarily by separating business assets from personal assets. But the LLC and the sub-S corporations are business structures, and these currencies are personal assets. In addition, courts have ruled that LLCs and sub-S corporations that are owned in the majority by one person or a closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation. So the LLC and the sub-S corporation are not going to provide the asset protection you're going to need and want. Some individuals have established something called a revocable trust, and a revocable trust will allow your estate to eventually avoid and bypass the cost and delay of probate, and in some cases reduce and even eliminate the federal estate tax. However, revocable trusts can provide no privacy or asset protection, so they're going to be inappropriate for your needs. Some individuals have established irrevocable trusts, but they're not packages. They're one single trust, and they do provide privacy and asset protection. However, if any asset within that single trust is involved in civil litigation, to the extent that a court would allow a civil proceeding to proceed, a civil action to proceed, then all of the assets in that trust would necessarily get dragged into that civil litigation because they're all owned by that same entity. So that's not going to provide the asset protection you want. The solution is to provide the only bulletproof asset protection available domestically. That's through a package of irrevocable trusts, and I will be explaining here in more detail why that provides the asset protection you're going to need both pre- and post-RV. But in order to have that protection, you're going to need to establish this package prior to the revaluation, and for the following reasons. First, by establishing this package of trusts, you will protect your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets held within our package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this package, you will be able to successfully avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, more than likely the IRS is going to spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would clearly be frustrating because it's going to come along at precisely the time when you have received this revaluation and you have much more important things to worry about. And ironically, the cost of a 6-year audit would be more than the cost of our asset protection trust package. On the other hand, if your trust is in place and your currencies have been assigned to that trust pre-RV, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of the revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for two reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if this revaluation were to occur within a rather sophisticated trust. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package, because included within the package is our specially designed gift subtrust. Many of you have expressed a desire to gift currencies to family and friends. Now, philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to give currencies prior to their revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the lump sum after you've done the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, you can gift to them through our special gift subtrust. And because you're gifting through this subtrust, their U.S. dollars will be protected along with yours. You will then be able to manage, invest, and distribute that money to those individuals as you deem appropriate. That can only be accomplished by gifting through this gift subtrust. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now, this estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate could bypass any federal estate tax. But the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. Scenario number two, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that very same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV package of asset protection trusts is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So using the previous example from above, this is what would occur. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Now, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be $5,000, the value of the currency at the time you transferred it out of title and to the trust, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. This can only be accomplished by establishing the trust and transferring the currencies to that trust prior to the revaluation. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This will protect you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why we've established a package of trusts, and this is how it would work. Once again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million, and now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust, the trust that was established pre-RV. Now, why is this critical from an asset protection standpoint? Well, I'll give you an example. Let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts of which you're merely a beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other assets and net worth are safely protected in the other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, the separate subtrusts are separate legal entities or persons, and the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue a separate legal entity or person. So your package of trusts work very much the way a barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your package of asset protection trusts prior to the revaluation of the dinar and hopefully these other currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, a holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2, which involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that you will need and want after the revaluation of these currencies. I'll just make mention of one here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages. Many of our clients have already expressed the desire to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is with the direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. We'll also have our tax specialists there, and with your newfound wealth, you're going to need and want good qualified professional advice about tax strategies. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets after the revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of major banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of their respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. And so you're going to want to get money out of the banks and at work in other markets. And third, we know the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-based currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets. And for that reason, you're going to want a substantial amount of your net worth invested in tangible assets. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust, which will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, and financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one optional gift subtrust, which can be converted at any time to a standard subtrust, and 8 additional standard subtrusts to hold financial assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this trust package was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Dinarians nearly 9 years ago, we knew that price tag was going to be just unaffordable for too many. So by basically simplifying and back-end loading this product, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust. The balance would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest, but the only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. With this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us with a credit card up front. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than the $100 a month you'd be paying us with our deferred payment arrangement. but we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place pre-RV for all of the reasons that we've discussed here this afternoon. Now, before we go to the Q&A, for the benefit of our newer callers, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously consider contacting us and getting our initial no-obligation package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas in various capacities over the last 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in these areas. Bob and I have been working together for about a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. And it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, it's just the reverse. Under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them. And invariably, it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. Again, thanks so much for listening to the call. We're going to the Q&A in just a moment. If the things we've discussed here are of interest, I strongly suggest you contact us and get our initial no-obligation package. It has a lot of information about us, about the revaluation, about trusts in general. The package does include everything you need if you decide to proceed and establish the trust package. After reviewing that package, if you have any questions, you can contact us by phone or email. We'll be happy to assist you in any way, and there will be no consultation fee. So I'm going to open the Q&A now. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We don't take service calls on the Q&A. This time is reserved for new callers that have questions about our services. And second, for obvious reasons, your name and number must be on the screen in order to participate in the Q&A. So we're opening up now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD Calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon, with the exception of the last digit. Rather than dialing 4, you'll dial a 3 and then use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out very periodically pre-RV, but after the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, emails will probably be going out on a weekly basis. So let's go to our Q&A here. Our first caller is area code 405. That's 405. Go ahead.
Hello, Jim. This is Doug Reeves.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well today. A couple of things. You mentioned evidence of any substantial payments. Wouldn't they be making regular or routine payments to keep the government functioning?
No. As a matter of fact, in previous years, that's exactly what they did. They withheld payments for almost 3 months. So it's easily something they could do. The point I was trying to make was that the fact that it did not that the currency did not reinstitute in January does not mean that we have to wait until next January 2021. There's a number of things they can do. Even if they make payments, they can recalibrate the budget. The problem is it's a nightmare for the finance committee to work backwards and try to undo what's happened. But they could withhold payments for a quarter, including the stipend, if they legitimately felt that they were on the verge of the passage of the new budget.
Interesting. I was just thinking about ordinary citizens. How in the heck do they survive for 3 months without getting any money? Just a point of question.
Well, how they survived? Well, the only money that would be affecting them directly would be the stipend, which they haven't been receiving anyway. Remember, governmental functions and governmental payouts have been suffering since 2003. So, I'm not saying it's the optimal situation. I'm just saying that if they feel that the budget is on the verge of passage and that could be scuttled by making a payment 2 weeks prior to that passage, they're not going to do it.
Okay. One thing that wasn't brought up in the call this week was that February 15th was supposed to be the end of the sanctions exemptions for Iraq, and I was wondering if you heard anything about that, because that's, Saturday?
Yes. What couple of things could happen? Trump could just go ahead and say, your exemption is expired, or Trump could say, in as much as you're on the verge of getting these things done, we'll let you slide until March 15th or something like that. That could happen, but you're correct. February 15th is the drop-dead date for the elimination of their exemption. And there's already so much going on to push back on the Iranians. He may not necessarily feel it's necessary to flip the switch on the 15th, but you're right. 15th is the drop-dead date.
Okay. Well, I'll listen to the other questions. If I have anything else, I'll get back on. Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir. Take care.
All right.
All right. Our next caller is, let's see, area code 312. That's Les. What's up, Les?
Hey, Jim. Hey, man. How are you? Good afternoon.
Hanging in there. Hope you're doing fine.
I'm doing all right. I saw what's that thing called? Oh, boy, a news article where it says that Alawi has completed all but 4 members of his cabinet or of the cabinet that were required. Was wondering if you've seen or heard anything about an article like that?
I can't specifically cite the article, but I've read in a lot of places that not only has he already made determinations about most of the members of the cabinet, but that it's a diverse group, it's a non-sectarian group, it's primarily individuals that are not officially a part of any bloc. The theory is that all of the blocs will agree with people or agree with the appointment or the not the nomination, but the what's the word I want? basically will agree that these people are okay because they're not part of any bloc, so they don't have to worry about these individuals being resistant to the fundamental demands of the blocs. I mean, the word I was looking for was confirmation. I think what Alawi's doing is he's really doing a good job, to be honest with you, under the circumstances.
Yeah.
He's trying to create a non-sectarian government. He's trying to address the issues with the protesters. He's trying to cooperate with the United States forces and the UN forces. He's checking all the boxes. So that's why I'm optimistic. At first I was ambivalent about him as a choice, but when I did a little research on the guy, I felt like, you know what, this might be the absolute best choice.
Yeah. So those 4 areas would be the finance, defense, oil, and higher education. Those are the 4 areas that he has not, according to the article, has not.
And it's funny because those are not the ones that they were having problem with their previous attempts. So, and those are not, to me, those are not deal breakers anyway, with the possible exception of defense. But even defense is kind of a back burner issue because Iraq right now, in terms of eradication of the Iranian influence, is wholly dependent on the United States and now the supplemental forces from the UN. So, like I said, I think this guy's doing as good a job as could be expected under the circumstances.
Okay. And then that sentence right after it says, it should be noted that only 10 days have passed since Alawi was appointed by the president.
Yeah, so, he's moving really, based on the track record of Iraq, he's moving at light speed. He really is.
If that's the case, there was something said about having 15 days to do something. Is this the 10 days that they're counting the 15 days of?
Don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, there's always they've always got their clock ticking on something. But the thing for me is that what they have said is they expect within the next couple of weeks to start paying out the stipend. And as I said in the call, it would make absolutely no sense to pay out this stipend with the provisional currency at the 1180 rate. They've spent the last 6 years collecting that currency and eliminating the 3 zeros. So to me, I don't see how they can pay that stipend out until they reinstitute. And if they reinstitute, that's got to be at a minimum of a 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's all I got, Jim. Thanks. I appreciate you, man, and have a good week.
You
and
too,
say
my
hi
friend.
To the professor.
Take care.
All right, buddy.
Will do.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, Leslie was our last call. I'd like to thank all of you again for taking the time to listen to the call. I know we were hopeful for January. Someone else just jumped in. I think Doug has another question. You there, Doug?
Yeah, one last thing. Thank you. When you're talking about the stipends, I know that they had did a lot of work to remove the physical currency because that's basically the type of economy that they had in the beginning. They didn't have the electronic means like ATM machines and things like that. Would it be possible for them to pay the citizens with a debit card or a credit card loaded with some value that didn't necessarily recirculate the physical currency?
Yes, but whether they put out the hard currency or they did it digitally, it still makes no sense to work with the 1180 rate. I mean, yes, I guess they could do it. I mean, they've done a lot of things that don't make sense, but commonsensically, the whole issue was to remove the provisional currency, which was only created to deal with hyperinflation after the removal of Saddam. So why would they go back and reinflate their economy by issuing massive amounts of money at the 1180 rate? It makes no sense.
Okay. As always, thank you, Jim.
Sure. Take care, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's our last caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to the call. I think that the news today, while we didn't get it done in January, is still good news. It looks like Alawi is really moving quickly to check all of the boxes so that they can reinstitute their currency. I certainly think it's better than 50-50 that we're going to get this done in the time frame, meaning in the first quarter. So those of you that have not as yet gotten your affairs in order and might have been interested in the things we've discussed, I strongly suggest you contact us. Again, there's absolutely no obligation by receiving our initial package, even though it includes everything you need should you wish to proceed. We'll be glad to assist you in every way. Our next call is, of course, next week. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Have a great week, everyone, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.